Now, this is a video about Rail. She sent me a email, and she said, "Well, how do you use that some product thing when you have an LLCR that's a forward LLCR?" Now, the main point about this video, well, one of the points about this video is how do we prove things? Now, I'm in my karaoke kind of place in Mongolia, and I might have to stop this video if it gets too loud. So, did I open generic macros? I hope I did. I might not have. Okay. Now, so I just said, look, we have some changing rates. They go up like this, and let's make a debt tenor of 20. Shift control R. Excuse me. Now let's make a period. Now I hope I never used to use this, but Alt-EIS 20 seems to work pretty fast. And then the one thing, and this is my friend Fwen who told me this, she said, the young people, they need to know the basics just to how to make a basic example. She was so right about that. So make sure, let's just make a level payment, PMT, and just take, we can't, oh, sorry about that. That was wrong. We can't do that with just a rate. Let's just, okay, let's make a simple sculpting. Let's say we have cash flow. And let's say let's make a DSCR of 1. And put the target debt service. See, I was wrong. I'm an idiot sometimes. Oh, God, a lot, unfortunately. Okay, and let's just put an input for that. Okay, and I think we're going to just make our cash flow. Let's make our cash flow go up a little bit. How about we'll make it times 1.01. Okay, so this, again, is about making some examples. And then, so our target debt service is just the cash flow divided by the debt service. This should be like an exam almost, okay? Let's see if I do it wrong. I'm going to prove that the LLCR can be computed with some product, and you have to multiply it by the prior value of the interest rate index. And to do that, you also have to create an interest rate index. The first thing you really have to do is create an interest rate index. Okay? Now, so we've got our target debt service, and let's compute the interest rate. And let's hopefully, you wouldn't dream of using match and index or VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP or anything else. You just use lookup. And you just click on the thing, and hopefully you believe me on the using the whole lines. You probably don't. And Shift Control R. And then we have our interest rate index. And I think this question, Ray, I hope I have her name right. Oh, gosh. It was wonderful. And it was really wonderful to get an email from her with a little question, because otherwise I just sit in my karaoke bar alone, not knowing what to do. And then we put our NPV of the DS, okay, and that's equal some product. Okay, that's what I keep saying, okay, and then we divide that by this interest rate index. This one you can't use the entire line for, and that's our debt. So then we put an opening balance and put our repayment and our closing balance. And we put this in, and then we put our opening balance equal our closing balance, and we put our interest. And remember always, I think somebody said some question about me using the average interest. I hope it's obvious why you use the opening balance, because you assume things occur at the end of the year. And then we have our target debt service minus our interest. That's our repayment. So our closing balance is the difference. Okay, that's our. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, I was a little interrupted, and I've taken a plane, and I'm near the equator in Malaysia rather than in Siberia now. If you can hear some background noise of birds, I'm sorry. Okay, now I think in the middle of this I was just going to copy this and get the closing balance of the debt, which goes down to 0, and it's our normal kind of sculpting. Okay, I changed one little thing also in the interruption. I put a base loan, and I just said, well, let's take 50% of that and let's use that for our sculpting, and we'll go from there. Okay, now I'm going to use that to illustrate a couple of points. So before, I'm sorry, I started this video and I'm kind of doing something really bad, but you know, obviously not obviously, the LLCR is the present value of the cash flows divided by the present value of the debt. It's just the DSCR with NPVs around it. That's how you can say. Now, since the debt, the net debt is the principal of the debt, and if it's the DSRA should be taken away from this, not added to the numerator, even if that's what your covenant says, whatever, it doesn't conform to the theory. Now, the key thing is that the LLCR measures, it's a break-even formula. Okay, LLCR is a break-even formula, and unless you understand that that's the idea of the LLCR, if you're sitting here debating little bizarre little things about it, you won't get anywhere. And the way you measure the break-even is you say it's our standard kind of formula, where you say LLCR minus 1 divided by LLCR. So if the LLCR is 2, you take 2 minus 1, 1, divided by 2, 0.5. The cash flow break-even percent reduction in CFADS. That's what it really is supposed to be doing. Now, that if we're going to evaluate what the right answer is, we'll try this. Now, okay. So we have an interest rate index that's changing, and I say the LLCR with, let's do it with NPV of CF and NPV of debt service, okay, which I hope we know that the NPV of the debt service is the same as the NPV of the debt. So I say, here's what you should do. You should take equals sum product and take all of the cash flow. Let's just take NPV of cash flow. Okay, put NPV, sum product. And you take all of the cash flow that we get, and you divide that by the discount factor. Okay, and you get the same answer. And I'll say with sum product. Now, if we did NPV with discount factors, and no, this is almost a waste of time. I hope you see the problem with it. So we'll put the discount factor, and we just put equal 1 divided by 1 plus the interest rate raised to the period, okay? Shift Control R, and then we put sum product again. This time you don't divide, you multiply it. Sum product, and you take this and you multiply it this time by the cash flow. Now the reason you cannot do this, I hope did I do this one right? Yeah, okay. The reason you cannot do this, if the interest rate was always the same, if it was always just like this, then everything would work. It would give you exactly the same answer. But if the interest rate changes, if it goes to 100%, we cannot say that this, oops, and did I keep it at, oh yeah, I kept it 100%, I don't know what. Then the value of the debt, here's what happens, this cash flow up here, where did it go? This cash flow had a much, much lower value, excuse me, than this one. I should have done it the other way. Let me do it the other way. Let's say it's 100% and 100% and 4%, okay? Then we suddenly say, well, this cash flow was discounted by 50% and this cash flow by 50%, but when we get to this period, it's only discounted by a tiny bit. So this cash flow here was discounted by a whole bunch, and then suddenly that cash flow, which lost all its value, retains its value. You have to compound. I wish I could come up with a better way. Maybe nobody will do that. Please give me a better way to explain that, okay? But I just think about Zimbabwe and whatever. Okay, so we need to account for this. So this is wrong. Now the next question is, let's go forward. If we go forward and say, okay, well, I'd like to compute the LLC. Well, now I can just get how about this? Shift space bar, shift alternate right arrow. We'll just kind of hide that for a minute. Okay. And then let's now put the NPV of debt service. Okay, and we do the same thing, sum product, and we take the debt service, our target debt service, and divide that by our discount factor. And that gives us the value of the debt. Now here's the problem. Now rolling forward, and now here was Rails. I hope she doesn't get mad at me. Here's her. She called it rolling forward. She hid stuff, so I don't think there's anything confidential here. She said, I've been doing the, oh God, basically the rolling PV, I'm getting different results, and I'm not sure. She said, can you please respond? So I responded to her, but I thought her question was so good it's worthy of kind of a video. Now, if you would go forward here, let's take the sum product, and instead of let's take the sum product of the cash flow, and we go to the next period, and divide that by the sum product of the interest rate. Okay, we get that. Now that number, I'm gonna, shift control 1, why don't I do that, is not the same as this. And the difference between this number divided by this number happens to be the 1.04. If we're going forward, we have to kind of recalibrate this whole thing. Now what we could do, I suppose, is put a $ sign right at the very end of this stuff, okay? Shift Control R, and then we don't get the value of the debt. Ooh, I guess it didn't work on the very last one. And so what we do is instead take this number, and we have to, we're discounting it too much, so we have to multiply it by the last number. And then we get the same number. I hope. Yeah, this is the same. Here's the debt. Sorry about not using a freeze pane here. Okay, maybe I'll freeze it here. Okay, Alt WFF. And then we, so it gives us the same answer until the very last number. That's because, oh well, if I don't know why it is. I don't have time to think about that. Let's just make it a 0. Okay? So, that's our rolling forward debt service. Now, we can do the same thing, cash flow. So the lesson here is that what we do is take that sum product of cash flow divided by interest rate index, and then you take that whole thing, so the PV of CFADS, I didn't really tell you that, is this one multiplied by last period interest rate index. I really appreciate this little email. I really, really do. So we'll do the same thing now. So we just take the sum product, okay, of this time I'm going to go with the cash flow. So we go to the next period cash flow divided by the, I'm sure there's a way to press the F4 key and get it all worked out, divided by this. And when we also have to multiply it by the last period thing, the last period, okay? And then we'll put the same dollar sign right on the W's. Okay, and maybe even the if error, excuse me for that. Okay, and then we, okay, and then we get our DSCR, our LLCR. Rolling LLCR. Now, that's all very well and good. So it's this divided by this. Or it's actually the cash flow divided by the ending balance. So we made a case that kind of has got a proof in it. And that's my friend Fwen. I shouldn't mention her. Oh, she's fantastic. She said, our young people need to go through some basic examples and understand where this happens. I wish that I could find bosses like her and get paid for having people watch my stupid videos and calling that part of their KPIs. Well, that's a digression. Okay, now let's try this. Okay, let's say that we don't have a percent reduction, and let's say our target DSCR is 2. Just a second. So the cash flow realized is, just a minute, it's just that. Excuse me. Okay, I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, and now we have exactly the same. This is our target debt service coverage ratio. Okay, and now our rolling forward DSCR is 2, and I guess I just proved it to you. I didn't even mean to, but it just proves that in this case the cash flow can go down by 2 times, it can go down by a factor of 2 all the way across. Now, if what we really should do, I suppose, is take a graph of the cash flow realized. How about this? Okay, let's try this. Shift F8, put the cash flow realized. Shift F8 again, and then hopefully get our debt service. Shift F8. Okay, and then alternate F1 to get a little graph. I'll put it up here maybe. Okay, I can't do that, it seems. All right, that's kind of our little guide as we go through. Oh, shit. Okay, excuse me. Okay. I gotta pause the video while I mess around with this crap. Okay, now I'm violating a rule. I'm going too long. But I want to demonstrate that, okay, if we have a LLCR of 1.5, and then I use this little formula, LLCR minus 1 divided by LLCR, that says our cash flow can go down by 33%. And then if I go up and say, okay, let's get our cash flow right here. And let's multiply that cash flow times 1 minus the 33%. And let's see what happens. Now, if I did this right, then, oh, shit. If I did this right, then the debt balance with a cash flow sweep should be exactly 0. And to get the debt balance with a cash flow sweep, let's start with our opening debt balance as we always do. Now, the opening balance, okay, equals the closing balance. Now, the cash flow sweep, I'm going to do something you should never do, but it's the minimum of the opening balance or the amount of cash flow we pay after we paid the interest. And then the closing balance is the opening balance minus the closing balance. The interest is the opening balance multiplied by the interest rate. Okay, and the cash flow after the interest is our cash flow minus the interest. See, I make things too complicated sometimes. I think that's as simple as a sweep is. And if you copy it across, it goes right down to 0. And if we made the cash flow decline bigger, let's say we made it 50%, then we go back and we never can pay the debt. If we make the cash flow only 20%, then we've paid off the cash flow too early. And you can see it really does work. It really does work. This is, I'll call this the cash flow sweep proof of LLCR formula. Okay, so that demonstrates that this formula, that really does work. This formula that says, this one, the break-even, the LLCR really does measure the break-even. That's why you're computing it. And if you don't understand that, then you might not really understand why you should do these odd sum product formulas, which right here, that's the kind of final formula. Rolling LLCR. Thank you very much for the little comment, and I really think it was worthwhile going through. Okay. Excuse me. So I'm stopping this video. Well.